Hello, everyone, and welcome to AWS Industries Live here from the Amazon Web Services Partner Team. So what this is a show that happens every other Tuesday, and it's really great because we get to talk to really interesting AWS partners that have solutions that specifically address industry needs. And what we get to do is we get to hear firsthand from them about some of the trends and customer insights that they're seeing as their industries evolve, and about how they've taken AWS and built some differentiated solutions that really drive those industries forward. So my name is Jason O'Malley. I am a senior partner solutions architect here at AWS, and I'm going to be one of your co-hosts today. And what I'm a solutions architect in something we call the Industry and Solutions Center of Excellence. And I specifically focus on media solutions. And today we have a media focused episode, so I'm really excited about it. About myself, I'm broadcasting live here from Chicago, and we do have our chats open, so we'll be watching those as we go. So if you do want to drop in the chat, let us know where you're joining from. And also, while we're doing the session, if you'd like to let us know, do you have any questions you'd like to ask our guests? And we can either try to answer those on the stream itself, or we can follow up after the session. So without further ado, I would also like to welcome my co-host and esteemed colleague, Carin Forman. Carin, please say hello.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm Carin Forman. I'm the Worldwide Partner Lead in MEGS, which is the Media and Entertainment, Games, and Sports Group at AWS. I'm also part of the Center of Excellence. In my role, I focus on partner strategy and enablement, working with our ISV partners to solve business challenges on behalf of our customers. My focus is in media supply chain and Gen AI partners. I'm really excited today to be joined by my co-host, Jason O'Malley, and two wonderful guests, Geoff Stedman, CMO with SDVI, and in the second half of our series, Andrea Kalas, VP of Archive and Media Services at Iron Mountain. So as they say in show business, with no further ado, let's get started.
Hi, Geoff.
Welcome, Geoff.
Hi, Carin, Jason, thank you. Really happy to be here. Thanks for having us on the show, and looking forward to our conversation together.
So Geoff, why don't we kick this off and have you properly introduce yourself to our global audience and tell us about your role at SDVI and about the product that you have called Rally.
Yeah, thank you. Again, my name's Geoff Stedman. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for SDVI. And my pleasure really to talk a bit about what SDVI is doing for our customers in the media and entertainment space, particularly as it comes to optimizing the media supply chain. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more too. So as Carin mentioned, SDVI has a platform, a product we call Rally. And Rally is a tool, a platform that our customers use to optimize their media operations while also moving to cloud-based technical infrastructure. So, when we started, we really spent a lot of time with the media operations teams and the technology teams and major media companies, really understand how they were moving content through their organizations. And what we noticed was an incredible amount of duplicate work, multiple sources of information, so no real single source of truth, so wasted resources, underutilized assets, all those kinds of things that many technical infrastructures deal with, especially with on-prem. And we said, if we could take all of this work that media companies have to do on their content, and we can turn that into fungible, elastic jobs using elastic infrastructure. So move that to the cloud, allow the infrastructure to scale up or scale down depending on that workload. We could make those operations far more efficient and far more responsive to what was happening in the market. One of our earliest customers was Discovery Communications, now part of Warner Brothers Discovery. They went all in with the cloud and moving their operations to the cloud, and it made a huge difference in their ability to publish content globally to all of their different outlets. Another key customer that has really gone all in on this cloud-based media supply chain is A&E Global Media, who've moved all of their operations to the cloud. And then other customers of ours include Sky and Paramount and NBC Universal. And so really some of the biggest media companies in the world are relying on the Rally platform to make their operations more efficient.
Geoff?
Great. So thank you, Geoff. Can you explain how SDVI Rally platform integrates into the media supply chain? You mentioned we're going to talk deeper about that. So take us through, what does that mean when you say it integrates into the media supply chain?
Yeah, so the media supply chain could potentially mean different things to different people. At its broadest sense, it could go all the way from script and camera to consumer consumption, the entire media supply chain. In our context, what we're looking at is really that body of work that happens within a media company from the time a finished piece of content comes in from whatever production facility was used to produce that, to the handoff to delivery partners who then post that content and make that content available for consumers to consume. Could be linear television, could be D2C platforms, could be VOD platforms, but all that work in the middle is what I think of a little bit as sort of the more mechanical side of media preparation. So you're creating different versions of content at different resolutions with different codecs. You might be modifying the audio in some way. You might be substituting captions or subtitles. You might be changing languages. You might be checking audio levels. There's just a number of steps that have to get done, many of which can be automated. And you can run through a supply chain to help that media factory really become far more efficient, far more agile, and have a lot more visibility into exactly what's happening as all that content moves through the supply chain. So really making the sort of processing of content a more automated, a more machine-driven sort of approach that's using only the resources that it needs when it's doing that work, and then spinning down those resources when there might be spare capacity.
That's great. And I know when we've chatted before, the Rally platform is really optimized. You're mentioning how it gives customers the insight and control over the workflows they have and orchestrating all of the sources and delivery destinations. I'm curious, with agentic coming into the picture and being a major topic right now, how are you seeing agentic workflows complementing and accelerating the Rally platform and how it works?
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts there. Agentic is really an evolution of this whole trend around AI. And I think there's a couple of different ways to think about and to look at AI in the supply chain. So, at the very sort of basic level, or at the first stage, is really using AI built on machine learning and deep learning models that can analyze content and extract information that helps media companies do more with that content, mostly monetize it, but also be able to find it. We've got several customers that have done archive migrations to the cloud, and as part of that process, they want to run AI tools on that content for things like image recognition, logo detection, audio transcription, audio translations, and other things. And we see those kind of services as what we call application services. And that's one of the things that Rally is doing as it's managing that supply chain, is it's bringing in applications to work on the content depending on what job is needed at that time. Could be a transcoder, could be an AI engine that is going to analyze that content. And then Rally will collect all of that metadata and keep that metadata associated with the content so that other systems or other people in the process can access that information and find content and be able to catalog content. And so that part of AI has been available with the Rally platform for several years, actually. And it's only getting better as those tools become more and more accurate, and our ability to pull out that metadata that makes content more discoverable. Within Rally, there is this notion of sort of a decision engine that's constantly evaluating what happens, what's the next step that has to be done, what's the result of that step, and based on that result, what's the next thing that needs to be done in the supply chain. And Rally is sort of orchestrating what happens there, and it's managing what applications need to be activated. it's provisioning the technical resources underneath those applications to get that work done. So it's doing all this sort of coordination of the resources and the jobs to get that work done. And so you mentioned agentic, and certainly it's an area we're looking at, is how can agentic AI be brought into that process of evaluating what's happening during the supply chain and making decisions around what happens next and what tool to use. And so there's certainly opportunities, I think, to allow AI not only to enhance the content, but to enhance the flow of content through a Rally managed supply chain.
That's great.
Thanks, Geoff. It's interesting. You touched on so many things, and one of the things you talked about was the word coordination. And I think one of the challenges that we've always seen in media supply chain, it is really a coordination effort across so many different processes and workflows. And one of the things that you really touched on, which I love, and a lot of our customers share their excitement about your platform, is the insights it provides in the workflows. And Rally has something around resourcing capabilities. So you not only give insight into where content is in the workflow, the packaging and distribution you said, but also the resourcing capabilities to inform your customers on that planning. Can you talk a little bit about that and what the future state is for such planning around that?
Yeah, so resource management is really a key element of what Rally does. Think of, as I sort of mentioned, think of Rally a bit as an orchestration platform for managing all the steps in a workflow, a resource manager for activating applications and provisioning the necessary technical cloud infrastructure to complete that work. And at some level, a media asset manager that's collecting immense amounts of metadata that is generated at every step in the chain. And some of that information is cost information. It could be time information. How long did something take? But one of the benefits of taking advantage of sort of transaction-based cloud infrastructure to do all of this work is we have very granular information about a piece of content, so unit level information on every step of the process. And what that allows us to do is to present information to our customers about exactly what does it cost to process this piece of content as it moves through the supply chain. Exactly how much time does it take? Where are my bottlenecks? Which applications are failing more often than others on particular jobs? And does that content come from a particular source? So customers are able to make much more intelligent decisions because they can see associations between aspects of where content's coming from, where it has to go, and what errors might be happening along the way. Where does a manual operator have to get involved versus why is other content flowing through completely automated? So being able to provide that kind of unit level granular information about every step in the process gives our customers a level of visibility and a level of intelligence that they really have never had before. Think about on-prem infrastructure. You've capitalized servers and software licenses, and then you're going to run some content through it. You don't know what that specific piece of content costs. You're just going to average out my CapEx divided by how many assets I'm putting through. With a cloud-based model, you can actually see the very specific time and cost information for every asset that's flowing through the supply chain.
I think that's powerful, especially too it's being able to have things like the platform be very event driven, and so you're using the resources you need, but then also you can allocate it to really understand how much is this costing you when you're doing sort of an ROI analysis on it. It's a really great point to make in terms of leaning into like the benefits that cloud provide. And yeah. I'm curious too, as we talk about like ROI with an intense focus on revenue pressure and such, one of the trends we're seeing is that as the industry's evolved and changed so much in recent years, we're hearing feedback about more and more focus on cost pressure. And one of those things that it's leading to is that studios and networks doing, say, like licensing deals, taking a look at their existing content libraries and maybe launching things like, say, a new OTT service, maybe expanding out into new geographies, new regions. I'm curious, is that similar to what you're seeing on the SDVI side?
Absolutely. In fact, you've just sort of described the fundamental value proposition that we bring to media companies, which is they are under immense pressure to produce more content, to get it out to far more endpoints or distribution platforms, and to do so without having any extra resources to do it. So that classic model of, hey, you need to do more and do it with less. And that is a core value that we bring to our customers because, again, of that ability to scale up the technical infrastructure. We allow media operations team to raise their capacity, to increase their productivity, to run more content through the pipeline, through the supply chain, without having to necessarily add more people or more resources. So that ability to give operations teams really the capability to respond to whatever the business is coming up with. And Jason, as you mentioned, the business is always looking for new deals and new opportunities to have more eyeballs get on that content. And we've had many customers who have set up their supply chain for sort of business as usual, and they're running a standard amount of content through that supply chain on an ongoing basis. And then all of a sudden, here comes a big deal. I just signed a licensing deal with one of the top streamers, and now I need to push, 5,000 new assets through this supply chain, and they gave me 2 days to do it, or a week to do it, or whatever it is. Well, the beauty of this cloud elasticity that we build into supply chains allows us to spin up those resources to handle that spike in capacity, get that job done, make the operations team look good because they satisfied that deal, hopefully ahead of schedule. But then when that job's done, then spin those resources back down. So customers are not limited by sort of fixed on-prem infrastructure or the licenses that they've acquired or the servers that they have. They're able to scale up and scale down and only pay for that usage that they've run through the system. It's sort of a pay as you go, pay for what you consume, and they're able to get those spikes in work done.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're seeing similar challenges on our side when customers are coming to us, and that's why the SDVI platform is so proficient, where it really gives people those insights. I recently read a case study where you had shared some metrics around the cost savings and the ROI numbers, where there's 70% plus reduction in manual touch points and things. Can you share any metrics and KPIs that you can showcase with any customer examples that you're seeing?
Yeah, I can give you a couple of interesting examples. Let me start with an example that is back to that topic I was just talking about, this notion of a big spike in demand and this need to fulfill a big order that came up. And our friends over at A&E Global Media had an opportunity to do a licensing deal with Discovery Plus and to put A&E content on Discovery Plus. And they were given a really tight deadline. And it was a large kind of library opportunity. And so when they looked at it internally to see how would we do this, they were looking at 30 to 60 days of work with an additional 3 to 5 people to get that work done, to move all that content over. Well, they didn't have that kind of time in the schedule. And so the teams at A&E Global Media and Discovery Communications at the time got together. They were both Rally customers. They were able to connect their Rally systems, automate the metadata updating or process that was part of that content transfer, and then initiate that content transfer. And it ended up taking 16 to 18 hours. As opposed to 30 to 60 days. So massive reduction in cost, in time, and a newfound ability to meet the demands that the sales organization had created for them, which is really good for the business. Another sort of more specific, back to your question about efficiency, Carin, Hearst Networks EMEA recently put in the Rally platform, and they started out with their ingest and QC workflows. And they kind of went through the process of mapping out how their current process worked today, lots of different spreadsheets, lots of email traffic. As content would come in, and they would match it up with an order, and did it meet the right specifications? And someone would check the metadata, and someone would check the video, and someone would check the content. And so they were able to streamline that process when they put in Rally. And that's a key point, because you're not just sort of replicating your current on-prem processes. When you move to the cloud, you have an opportunity to sort of rethink the processes and how do we make the whole thing more efficient. But in that process of setting up their ingest and QC operations and with the Rally platform, they went from what they had estimated as 16 touches for every piece of content in the prior world to only having to have a person interact with the system 4 times. So back to your 70%, a 75% reduction in the number of manual touches as content comes into Hearst Networks for them to then push out to the rest of their supply chains. And so we see that kind of result over and over. Early on, one of our customers had about an 80% reduction in manual touches that they saw. So we see numbers that sound a little impossible, a little crazy, but when you really have the opportunity to transform your supply chain and rethink what you're doing, use applications that maybe you couldn't use before because you didn't have licenses to them or just hadn't had the opportunity to evaluate them, bring them in, tie it all together, automate that chain, you really get immense efficiencies. And as efficiencies multiply, you give the team agility. You give the team the ability to respond faster to whatever comes their way.
That's great. And just sorry to jump in, Jason, but I see we have a couple questions from the audience. So just to put up an audience question, the question, Geoff, if you aren't able to see it, is could Rally be used as part of a post-production workflow? For example, going from a set DIT to edit faster while also automating transcoding a raw media file.
Yeah, I think we tend to sell mostly in the post-production side, so we haven't really put Rally into a production sort of workflow. But in terms of managing the incoming content that might be coming from a set or a production, automating some transcoding of that content, notifications of people that that content is now there and ready for whatever the next step is. And we also do have some tools for because in the supply chain, there are manual steps. There are opportunities or requirements, really, where maybe a piece of content failed an automated QC check, and I need to have an operator evaluate that content. We have an element of Rally we call Rally Access, which will spin up a work order for an operator, notify them that, hey, there's a piece of content that has to be checked. And whether it's Adobe Premiere or other tools, we'll open up that edit environment. There's a panel in that screen for the operator to look at, and all the information is on the timeline. So they can go to exactly the spots they want to make edits or look for corrections that might be needed. You can imagine how much faster an operator can get through content when they only have to check 3 or 4 spots and they're pointed to those spots instead of having to watch the whole thing and try to find those errors that need to be reviewed.
Great. Geoff, coming from post-production world and lots of high-touch, inefficient processes that drove me a little crazy. It's always great to hear. And also, I especially resonated with me. I was part of a project at one point taking in 2,700 hours of new content all at once. And that was a big reason, the only way we could handle it is we knew we had to go to the elasticity of the cloud. Otherwise, it just wasn't going to fit through the tiny funnel of our existing
Exactly.
pipeline.
If you're building on-prem infrastructure and you have a certain amount of capacity, so you're either going to overbuild it for those times but then it sits unused most of the time, or you're just going to have limits. And you're right. Moving to the cloud really opened up that ability for the pipe to just get bigger or smaller depending on what you're putting through it.
Great. I think hey, Carin, do you want to say anything? I know we're coming close on
No,
the time.
I just, as we come to the bottom of the hour, I wanted to also say that, SDVI is a global platform. You have global customers. I know the two examples you provided were, but you have some recent customers in the European market that are, I don't know if you could speak to those. And also a call to action with IBC. We have the International Broadcast Conference coming up in September, and wanted to see if you wanted to speak to anything that will be happening for you there and your presence there.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So yeah, you're right. We are a global company that sells globally, and we have had some recent success in Europe. That Hearst Networks, I should have said, is Hearst Networks UK.
Okay.
So that was a European customer example, but we have others with ITV and RTL Germany, and so we continue to grow that presence and sort of grow our footprint as more and more customers look to move to the cloud for their supply chain. Yeah, in terms of call to action, a couple of things. Obviously, you can visit our website if you want more information. So that's sdvi.com. But also, as you mentioned, we have the large IBC trade show coming up in September. We will have a booth there, literally right next door to the AWS booth in Hall 5. So we're looking forward to being next to you guys. And yeah, we'll be showing the Rally platform. We'll be showing some really interesting edit workflows. So that question about production, you could see real-time edit in the supply chain as part of the demonstrations that we're showing, as well as our ability to automate the packaging and delivery of content to endpoints. That was a thing we haven't really had a lot of time to talk about, but the supply chain is extending. What started out as sort of factory automation is really now moving to all of the media logistics and delivery elements of the supply chain. And at IBC, we're going to really show some new capabilities of the Rally platform to automate that distribution function that so many of our customers have to manage.
Great. Well, I'll be there, Geoff. So hopefully I can say hello in person. And
Absolutely.
I think with that, I think we're almost at the top of our half hour here. So I want to thank you, Geoff, for joining us. It was a really great conversation. Great to hear what you're seeing and evolve in trends within the industry. And thanks for our commenters as well. Great discussion in the chat. We'll be back in a few seconds. We're just going to switch over to a brief title card, and we'll be right back to talk with Andrea Kalas, who's the Vice President of Media and Archival Services at Iron Mountain. And we'll see you there.
Carin and Jason, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Geoff. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Geoff.
Good to talk.
You too.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Industries Live, where in case you just joined us and you weren't part of the first half, this is a show where we talk to some of our AWS partners that are really focused on industry-based solutions that run on AWS and the cloud. And thanks for joining us today. As you see, we have our chat open. So there's been some great discussion already. So if you want, tell us where you're watching in from, or if you have any questions while you're watching the segment today. And what we'll do, just to recap about what Industries Live is that this streams every other Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And each week, what we do is we have a new guest from one of our industry partners, and they come on and they talk to us about what are the trends they're seeing within industry. Today, we're taking a look at insights within media and entertainment as an industry, but our next session is actually going to be on financial services, and we rotated around. And what some of the things we found by rotating some of the industries around is you can start to see some commonalities and trends within different industries. And so even if the industry that's on, say, the week you're watching it might not be your core industry, you might be able to pick up some nuggets or insights that you can carry back to your industry and apply them there. So a shout out there. Once again, my name is Jason O'Malley. I'm a partner solutions architect here on our, what we call the Industry and Solutions Center of Excellence team. And it's a global partner strategy team that's focused on myself, media and telecom. And I'm joined here today with my colleague, Carin, and co-host today. And Carin, if you'd like to say a hello to the new watchers.
Hello to our new watchers out there. Again, I'm Carin Forman. I'm the worldwide partner lead in media, entertainment, and games and sports. And as Jason was saying, it's really great to be participatory in these events because you will see common themes, even though the focus here is on media and entertainment. Our previous guest talked about media supply chain, and that is really common whether you're in the media and entertainment space or in manufacturing and others that have supply chains. Our second guest for this episode is Andrea Kalas, who's the VP of Media Archives at Iron Mountain. Andrea has an incredible background in archives, so very much looking forward to this discussion. And again, those archives can be documents. It could be for the healthcare industry, the imaging industry. Again, today's focus will be on media and entertainment, but it's really great to see these episodes week to week and how there's relevancy across industry. So let's welcome Andrea Kalas.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Andrea.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. Andrea, you and I have had chats before, so I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. So tell us about Iron Mountain and tell us a lot about your background because you are oftenly very modest, but you have been working in archives with some of the most well-known and renowned archives across the globe. So hopefully you will share some of those insights and stories in today's episode.
Well, yeah, I've had the privilege of working in some of the greatest archives. You know, I've been a film archivist for many years. So I worked at UCLA Film and Television Archive, British Film Institute, Paramount Pictures, and Discovery, where I met you, Carin. So it's been a really wide and varied, amazing experience working in large collections, public collections, corporate collections. So I've just had the gamut of experience, and it's a super exciting time to be involved in archives, in my opinion. And so I couldn't be happier to be with Iron Mountain, working with another group of archivists, right? Because that's what we have within the Iron Mountain's Media and Archival Services team is there's a group of archivists that are helping other archives with all of their services, whether it's putting things in great environmental storage or boxing up a fragile document. But always, of course, when it comes to archives that need to be digitized, that's always part of the mix, right? No matter what other services we're providing, that's definitely part of the mix. But we work really closely with those clients because they may have all sorts of different materials that need to be digitized. So we need to have that intense expertise to know how to digitize a 2-inch video, right? Or how to be careful with, like a company's founding document. So it's the care around the materials in addition to making sure that they are digitized and available. So that's in essence what Iron Mountain does, work with those clients to find the best solution. And AWS has been a great partner in trying to do that because so many people are already working with the kinds of tools you're using and obviously the storage as well. So our connection has been a natural one too, and we've really appreciated that.
Well, thanks, Andrea, for that introduction. I've had the absolute pleasure to visit your facility on several occasions, and I will keep my NDA and my own personal archive, not to speak of it. But you really manage at Iron Mountain some of the most incredible archives, some of the most differentiated archives, music archives, film archives, as you said. So can you talk to us a little bit about the different archives you see and why are customers digitizing their content?
Well, first of all, it's really, just when you think about it, isn't it incredible how many archives are now available, right? Just think about, the fact that, a student sitting in a dorm room can literally find primary sources from there, right? They don't even have to go to the library anymore. There's so much out there. And I think it's sort of becoming almost like a natural inclination for anyone with an archive. It's not even a question anymore that they must be digitized because that's the way they're discovered and used, right? So I think people think about how to digitize, which to digitize first, rather than an off switch of whether you digitize at all. That's not even a decision anymore, I don't think. I think and it makes sense, right? I mean, just in terms of, moving image content, film and video, I mean, I read somewhere that like right now it's like the market for video materials in somewhere is like 200 billion. And in a few years, it's going to be 500 billion, so our whole currency right now is in the moving image in a lot of ways. Every commercial we see, everything we scroll through, video is everywhere. So it makes sense too that people that have both moving images and music would want to get into the act, right? And the archives can create a great resource for that. So whether people have incredible photographs that they want to scan, and we have ways of making sure that those things are photographed in the best possible way with the best possible standards, and then also are available for people to search over, find for research, include in documentaries, purchase. Same with music. We can help people identify a master that has never been heard since it was first recorded, and then make that available for people to stream and license and things like that. So it's really satisfying, right? When you come to something where it's almost an undiscovered treasure in a different archive, and then it becomes available for people. It's a sort of magical transformation.
I've definitely seen that firsthand, Andrea, of like just seeing, taking these assets that may have been sitting idle, so to speak, and then just being able to not only take them and digitally preserve them to help, their longevity, but then also to find that new value that they can create. And it's cool to see the way that can find new audiences. I'm curious too, so with both with the digitization, but then also as the industry and sort of within the businesses itself, as there's a growing importance of making those data-driven decisions. I'm curious, how are you at Iron Mountain? Are you thinking about helping customers leverage, say, like the archive metadata they have and finding what's in the archive to help inform what are those, like their content strategy or production decisions?
I think there's two parts of that, right? I mean, part of it is the information that the archive itself holds, which could be, it could be documents about that thing that they are preserving, right? And so those could be scanned as well as the object itself or the film itself, and how you combine that information. I think the other thing too is, Iron Mountain is a big company, and we work with organizations that may have a film archive here, but might have a records management system over here, right? And those insights can actually go across each other, right? So there's, before AI was even an idea, tons of entertainment companies were working on how best to find their audience for the shows and movies they're producing, right? And what resonates with different audiences. And there was fascinating stuff going on with like, I remember some of the DNA of a movie and how you can dig down deep into understanding. I always think about my Paramount days, like Saturday Night Fever being an example of that, right? It's a fun dance movie, but it's also a dark movie, right? Until you get to that nuanced part of understanding what that movie is, how do you actually understand how another movie like it will have an audience response, right? So that digging down that nuance of what that content is about so you can find new audiences, I think there's incredible that we've just begin to discover how we can use information from the assets themselves, the video assets, the films, the stills, the information about those assets, and then maybe other information that might exist in that entertainment company in just another part of it, of the company, and that's really exciting about what Iron Mountain can provide, is because that's where we're going with our platform. And I think AWS is kind of thinking about that the same way, right? Where are those places where that data really interacts to give people insight? I think there's so much we're going to find out on how to help people there.
That's great. And I think especially you mentioned like the asset itself, but maybe there's ancillary assets related to the production that get digitized and captured too, and how that can inform. So I think that's a really cogent point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think data comes from so many different places. Like you mentioned, it comes from the scripts, it comes from call sheets, it comes from different things that are in production. And going back to how you made an introduction, when we met in our early days at the Discovery Channel, the natural history films that Discovery Channel was shooting had about a 40-to-1 shooting ratio. So we actually made new productions out of the existing B-roll for shows like Animal Planet, and Animal Planet Kids. And when we did that, we dug into the B-roll and we tagged it manually with metadata and sort of became sort of our walking library science dictionary for ourselves. Now, with the advent in technology, there's really a lot of opportunities, as you had mentioned, to OCR your scripts or to get other metadata involved. Talk to me about what role do you see AI playing in some of this new transformation for giving people access to their archives and their content?
I am just so excited about the potential, right, for content discovery. I mean, I'm obviously interested in that. And I'm just seeing tools pop up, some of the ones that you create, others that do that. And we're trying to track all of them right now because I absolutely believe that, our way of helping people is to combine AI tools with archival services writ large, right? I just don't see how we could not offer that significantly to our clients. I think that's what they're going for. I mean, like, think about that amazing Discovery Wildlife catalog, right? I want to search for a lion catching, a hyena, and he's going 40 miles an hour while he's doing it. Like, you could actually get down to that granular level potentially, right? Like the ability to actually dig into the archive and find things that are either for, like I heard this phrase the other day. I loved it. That some people are not calling themselves documentarians anymore. They're calling themselves archival filmmakers. I love that because it just means that there is so much more than just a basic, sort of talking head, interview, show some footage, that people are starting to be really creative with how archival footage is woven into news stories. And I think AI can help expand that enormously, right? Maybe people are looking for a particular, even like cadence or, a way a music works against an image, or all sorts of different creative ways of digging into that archive and finding ways of exploring that will also give people other creative ideas about potentially what to shoot. My mind gets blown thinking about the potential that I can't even imagine yet, right? It's kind of like, when I think about digitizing archives, I think about when it was like just 23 years ago ish, that I was saying, one day we're going to go to the internet and we're going to search a title and we'll be able to see any video, any movie we want, right? Like, and here we are, and it's way beyond that, right? We couldn't have even imagined, how this turned out, right? And I feel like we're at that starting point with AI too. Like, we can't even imagine how much this is going to impact creativity, and that the archive is a part of it. I'm super excited. So, with that team at Iron Mountain, this is what I'm driving them to do. Let's listen to our clients. Let's find out what they need. Let's build something that's really going to help them. Because I think, because they're thinking that way too, and we're thrilled that we can partner with them.
I could see, and it reminds me too. So I was part of a project. This is several years back, but it was where you got access to a huge archive, and then went through it to pull out items and to find new audiences for them. That process, we utilized the cloud technology to help scale and to release it. But one of the things that we didn't really have as much available at that time was the AI technologies to really help sift through that archive and find those diamonds in the rough and those moments that really really exemplified the greatness of that archive. I'm curious, as the technologies such as multimodal AI come in and start to become more prevalent in workflows and also in conversations maybe you're having, I'm curious, how are you seeing that combine, with your archival expertise to say enhance search precision, accuracy, finding those nuggets?
I mean, Carin knows I always use this phrase, when library science meets rocket science, right? Like I do think we owe a huge debt of gratitude to, the librarians who have really worked with us to categorize the world, right? They have, the card catalogs that were, once the only way of finding things. They worked hard on making sure that there were authority around what was a place, what was an actual, who was this person, to definitively identify and accurately do that. And we have drawn upon that enormously. And we continue to, and every archive has used that kind of library science to make sure there's a way in to find what they're looking for, right? Now with the tools that AI brings on top, it's just better, right? And I do think that structured data, that cataloging influence is incredibly important for precision and accuracy in search, so that this is actually the movie you're talking about, or this is the place you're talking about. But then the ability of AI to sort of just vibe on that and bring more to the table is amazing. So, and I've seen it work really well when there is that structured data to get closer. Even if it's things like, all right, let's just pull the closed captions and make those searchable, right? You can get down to a time code, right? And then you have a visual search over that also brings you more to that. So that's super exciting. I think the other super exciting thing is we're seeing that, the fact that you can use more of a natural language search in your prompt for AI means your audience for archive can really grow, right? Think about it. Like, we've gone from going to a card catalog and going over to a library desk and saying, now, where is this Dewey Decimal section in this library, to find like this. The steps are incredible, right? But then, in the medium term, even though archives were digitized or things like that, you still had to have that consultant archive to help the researcher, right? And I think we still will. I don't think that's going to go away. The knowledge about a collection is always going to be something that helps people find things. But I think people actually not having to phrase things in a way that only an archivist understands is just going to open up the archive enormously. And I think it's going to help all archives find their constituents, find ways of doing things that are new and bring life to the organization that archive lives in. Because no archive stands alone. It's always got its own clients, right? So our clients have clients of their own. And so that's how we know we're successful. If they're making their clients happy, then we're doing a good job.
I think that's impactful too, because maybe search systems of the past had to have like that specific syntax, and you had to be really familiar, like search, like sort of Boolean search this within this within
but
this.
Not that, right?
Yeah. And so now you can it opens it up to a wider part of the organization that they can just say, I'm looking for, cheetahs in the, animal footage film, and it's able to identify that without having to be an expert at it. And I think that's really powerful as well.
Yeah. I think it's also expanding the semantic search and understanding, where you can say, you could be specific as I want cheetahs in the Serengeti, but you can also say I want content that is soft or gives a feeling of soft. And it could be a wind or the beach or things like that. So I think it gives you a much more expansive opportunity for searching capabilities. I think it would be a great time to go to our audience. We do have a question from the audience, and I want to thank those that have been extra engaged with us in the chat screen. So there's a question in the chat that says, as archives become more accessible and have pieces found a new life, or is there new audiences that it wouldn't have had without that searchability?
I absolutely believe that's true. I think that especially when it comes to the kinds of explosion in documentary filmmaking or archival filmmaking, as it's, I'm excited to be called, the way people are using archival footage is brand new. And I think also the fact that people understand that digitization is sort of not an option anymore means more and more content is available. I mean, I come from film archives, right? And the difference between when, I started my career, and now in terms of accessibility of just movies being available to watch is massive, right? And I think that's only going to continue.
Yeah. It's interesting, as we talked about the fusion of, library science and, artificial intelligence. Talk to me a little bit about some of the specific benefits some of your clients are experiencing from that fusion, and how is that translating onto the screen or into how your customers are handling their archives?
Yeah, I think we really are trying to listen to our customers as they build it. Like, so for example, if there's a music library and one of their functions is providing music for commercials or for other films or things like that, they'll license some of their music for that, right? There may be times when the initial request isn't right for some reason, right? AI could find a really amazing alternative, right? Easily and quickly. Like, okay, maybe that doesn't work, but here's a bunch of other ones that have the same beat or have the same feeling or have the same idea behind it that you can use instead. That's a really interesting one, right? Or maybe even somebody says, I'm thinking about something like this, but I'm not sure. Well, here's 6 or 7 things to think about. And in footage sales too, another one where, you can, the ability for people to get just much more specific in terms of the kinds of images they're really looking for means more and more potential use of that. So those are the 2 areas I'm starting to see more, but we think it can be potentially for anybody that has an archive. And it could be in an academic environment, it could be in a media and entertainment environment, right? Just the specificity, the precision, the depth of knowledge is just going to enhance whatever project people are working on. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, I've seen a lot in, believe it or not, higher education. A lot of these archives are moving. A lot of sports archives are moving. Healthcare, the amount of content for, imaging and then being able to share those results with doctors worldwide. So it is really it's amazing the expanse of content that you all touch.
Yeah, no, and it's true. Video is everywhere, right? And it will continue to expand into just sort of every corner. So that's the other part that we're trying to do at Iron Mountain, is make sure that the expertise within our group helps people that may not be in traditional areas of video, right? And audio. So we can help, those people who also need insights for that kind of information, right? Video is turning from just something fun to watch into something that could have complete data for an industry, or have insights into all sorts of different areas, right? Or be evidence, right? So it's not just on the big screen going to the movies and in your living room when you come home anymore, right? It's everywhere.
I liked your point earlier too about the sort of that like similar content and recommended content, because I think that's one of those things that like doing that as a person and trying to tag all the similarities is just like, AI is just so well suited for that, of like noticing trends that you wouldn't know, or trends and similarities between content. And I think that's really powerful as well, especially if you have something that's like close, but you're like, oh, I want this, but slightly different, and it can help you find that in a way that maybe was difficult.
Yeah, that ability of AI to actually inspire, right? To actually sort of suggest, and I was like, oh, that's a good idea, or no, that's a horrible idea. I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad I didn't go down that path, right? Like, it really can be. I think people using tools right now for just general, generative AI already know this, right? So they're coming to archive search with that understanding of how these things work, and applying that to their ability to do better archive search and find different materials. And that's exciting too.
Totally agree.
Andrea, in addition to the work that you all do in digitization, you do a lot of work in audio and restoration. Is there anything you want to comment on that while we have the audience here?
Oh, it's just been so amazing because, my background wasn't in music, but now I'm sort of wish it had been, because, oh my God, the collections are just, mind-blowing, beautiful, incredible. And the people that work with them too are working with, often collections that come from all sorts of different sources and come to them in all sorts of different kinds of shapes. Some of them not cataloged at all, some of them in great shape, some older music masters, right? So helping them go through that entire process of, like we have a tool that actually takes an image of all 6 sides of a box really quickly and then does OCR even on handwriting. So those are for, collections where there's never even been any cataloging. So we can start there and then go all the way through with handling some of the older audio formats really carefully while we digitize them. So we're really getting the best out of them that we can. And then making them available for their clients to use for, just for releases, for, for other kinds of materials that they're doing for licensing, for all sorts of different events. And, they're really, they have, in a lot of ways, the music industry has had a step ahead of some of the more of film companies and broadcasters in terms of that transition. So we can learn from them too. I think it's also interesting to see how they've done as an industry, and they're very much involved in technology and how that can help this. So having the music archives be a part of it is really exciting.
Great. I think we're coming close to the end of the show. I was curious, Andrea, any last kind of things you're excited about, you're looking forward to going forward?
I mean, I think that, we're trying to continue to, as we work, with individual clients, right, and what their needs are, that helps build out our tools generally, right, that Iron Mountain provides. So that's the exciting part, is just learning from our clients what they need so that we can work with you guys to build out, better solutions to actually, the soup to nuts archive path from something sitting on a shelf to something that's really available and searchable by AI. So that's what I'm just excited about, is, sharing, knowledge with our clients about what we know about AI, but also hearing back from them what they really need, so that we can translate that into better and better tools for archive discovery.
Agreed. And I think we have our URL. So if anyone's interested to find out more about Iron Mountain's services, you can check that out. I think it's in the chat as well. And with that, I think we're almost at time. So Andrea, thanks you so much for joining us today. This was really great discussion, and having been through some archival projects myself, it was great to hear your insights about what you're seeing. So thanks for joining.
Obviously, I love talking about archives, so thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Andrea, thanks for joining us, and I echo that. Archives to me never get old.
Yeah,
I like that.
I love it.
That. All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us today as we wrap up, and especially everyone commenting in the chat and engaging and helping make this a really great episode. Don't forget that this is a bi-weekly show, so we'll be back in 2 weeks, and that'll be August 12th, I believe, and we'll be, talking about the financial services industry. So we're switching it up, and so make sure to don't miss that. Subscribe to the LinkedIn page, the YouTube page, the Twitch page, and with that, thank you, Carin. Thank you, Andrea. Thanks for all of our guests, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining on this episode of Industry Live.